I couldn't. I love the night. That's the only time I feel really alive.
That's what David wanted.
Blood, I was to find, was a necessity as well.
A vampire in love with a slayer. It's rather poetic. I am the monster that breathing men would kill. I am Dracula.
Good evening, my fellow vampire lovers. The sun is very down. It is the middle of the night right now, and I am coming to you, Lena Nazari, your host, with a bonus episode because I just got back from watching Vampires of the Velvet Lounge. It just came out, and I went out, I saw the first showing. I'm back, I'm here recording off the cuff. We're gonna go back to the way I used to do things, and there's a thunderstorm happening outside right now, so this is perfect. For anybody who has never watched this channel, listen to this podcast, massive spoiler alerts, I am going to ruin it for you. So we're going to talk about it. And like I said, I did not type up a script or anything. This is off the cuff. Well, it's fresh in my noggin because I want to talk about this movie. I am not what I thought I was about to go see, I'll tell you that. So, Vampires of the Velvet Lounge. Let's talk about it. In a nutshell, this movie is about 3 female vampires who are using the dating apps to lure in their prey. And it's going very well for them until they catch the attention of vampire hunters. So that, in a nutshell, is the movie itself. Now, I told you, massive spoiler alert. Our master vampire of the 3, we're going to call them the Coven of Vampires. And there is a man with them. I think his name was like Chuck. He's sort of the, numbskull of the group. He's a fun character. But the master is Elizabeth Bathory. Yes, Elizabeth Bathory. So right out of the gate, we have a massive vampire reference. The whole thing starts with text talking about Elizabeth Bathory and how she supposedly is the most prolific female vampire serial killer of all time. And of course I did a whole episode on her if you want to go back and see the truth of what happened with Elizabeth Bathory. But Mina Savari plays Elizabeth Bathory. And then the 2 ladies that are with her are, wow, I already forgot their names. Helena and Jude? Starts with a J. I don't know. And Joan. So it's Elizabeth, Joan, Helena, and then the guy's name I think was Chuck. I don't know. Anywho, but guess what? So the thing opens with a kill, and then we get these amazing opening credits. And I was shocked to see the cast list, and then to find out, guess who did the theme music? Freaking Bear McCreary from The Walking Dead. So like, amazing. And we have some crossovers, which I'm so excited about. So Mark Boone Jr. played the Chuck, the guy that's with the girls, and he played Bo in 30 Days a Night, which we just talked about. So he walked on screen and I was like, oh my god, it's Bo. And then we also get Lachlan Rowe. You guys, trust me, you've seen him. He's been in so much stuff. But he was in an episode of Supernatural as well as an episode of Charmed, which both have vampire episodes, so we're going to give it to him. Tyrese Gibson, another big name. And he was in a movie we really don't like to talk about, but we're going to give him the vampire crossover. He was in Morbius. But the big one, the big comeback, Stephen Dorff. Stephen Dorff was in this movie, and he, of course, was Deacon Frost in Blade. So I was so excited to see all these faces. And there's some other big names in here. Mina Savari, she's the one who plays Elizabeth, but also Tom Berenger, like big names. Anywho, so those are our vampire crossovers. So we're going to do what we used to do back in the day. I'm not going to talk about it from beginning to end. We can do that maybe when it comes out on DVD. But for now, we're going to do what we used to do, and we are going to break down the universe and discuss the vampires themselves. All right, relationship to humans. So these vampires appear human for the most part. So they are out, they are dating, they are interacting with humans. They have a bar, so obviously humans are coming into their business, but the humans are not aware that they are interacting or about to be eaten by vampires. However, there are vampire hunters. And so we see two main female vampire hunters, but then there's a bunch of guys that are part of this group of elite vampire hunters who show up at the very end. So that's their relationship to humans. Relationship to animals, we actually never see them interact with animals. However, we're going to talk about this when we get to like their powers. Appearance, like I said, they appear human until they vamp out. So at times their eyes glow green, and I mean glow, like glowing neon green. And that's when they're using their powers. And then their fangs, 2 sharp retractable on each side for a total of 4. And then they can also shift into like these like bat human creatures. So they are women with fangs and then bat wings coming out of their back. So very cool. We get to see that almost like immediately as the movie starts, like pretty quick into the movie, we get to see them do that. So they are able to like shift in and out of these different forms. Blood, yes, these vampires do need blood. They drink blood. Elizabeth bathes in blood. Lots and lots and lots of blood in this movie. Food, no, the vampires do not eat. However, we do see them drink a lot. So one of the main themes of this movie is absinthe. They have an absinthe bar. They mix blood into absinthe. They give absinthe to their victims. Lots of absinthe in this. So we do see them drink alcohol. Sunlight, yes, they are bound to the nighttime. If they go out into the sun, they will burn up and turn into ash. And as a matter of fact, we see one of the vampires do that. She hits a point where she's like, I can't do this anymore. And she runs off and watches the sunrise and then turns to ash and blows away. So we know that sunlight will kill them. Where do they sleep? So this is interesting. Down underneath their bar, they have like a coffin room. So there's several coffins, and we do see a couple of them sleep in coffins, but one of them actually digs down into dirt and sleeps in the dirt. So they don't necessarily have to sleep in soil. This one chooses to, she likes it. But as long as they're out of the sun, it appears that they can sleep anywhere. And at one point, the coffin lid does get opened up with the vampire inside, and it's not like they die during sleep or anything like that. They're just laying there looking like they're sleeping in the coffins. Holy items. So we do see a cross burn a vampire. So we know that. So for the whole movie, the vampire hunter is wearing a cross, and we were getting towards the end and I was like, I guess we're never going to see if the cross works or not, but we do get to see the cross burn a vampire. The rules. So it's interesting. A couple times, like they met up with these guys at the bar and they were like, are you going to invite us to sit down? Are you going to invite us to dance? And one of the vampires is like, do you want to know my kink? I love being invited places. So they make jokes about the invitation thing very often, but we never see if they need invited into a residence because there's never any scene that happens in a private residence. It's either a public place or their bar, but they do mention being invited several times. So I don't know if the human has to invite them into their space in order for them to kill them, but they did mention invitations several times. Powers. So this was something I paid very close attention to. They have a lot of powers. I will say that most of the powers we see come from Elizabeth, and that might be because she is the oldest and the most powerful of all of them, but some of the vampires' powers that we do see. So like I said, they can sprout bat wings and they can fly with these. They move like they turn to black smoke. So they like turn to black smoke and then appear somewhere else as black. Like it's that poofing thing that we see a lot. And like, so I watched that happen. The flying. Also, they can mesmerize you. So they can lock eyes with you and say like, point a gun at him and kill him, and you'll do it. so they can compel you. The other thing they can do is they can actually get into your head and have you see things. So one of the vampire hunters starts to see Elizabeth in her head, like having conversations with her and kind of like getting into her. And the other vampire hunters keep asking her, like, are you having moments of dizziness? Do you feel like you're losing time? So they continually are asking, like, they're saying, think happy thoughts, don't let the vampires get in your head. So the vampires can get into your head. And towards the end, and this, I'm telling you, massive, massive spoiler alert. Towards the end, the main vampire hunter is sitting with Elizabeth, and Elizabeth puts some of her blood into the absinthe and hands it to the vampire hunter. And the vampire hunter only remembers fighting Elizabeth, but then at the end, as she's walking out, the sun starts to burn her, and she realizes that she was mesmerized and she drank Elizabeth's blood, and she is now turned, and she did not recall that because Elizabeth was in her head. So this takes us to the next thing, which is, back to powers though. The other thing too is Elizabeth like goes into a room and just waves her hand, and people all just start killing each other and attacking each other. And then at one point she goes into a club and she waves her hand and like everybody blows up. So Elizabeth is extremely powerful. So this takes us to how are they made. So we actually see two people turned in the movie. The first one ingests vampire blood and then is bitten himself, and then they bury him down in dirt. And this completes the transformation. So it was very much like vampire or True Blood, stuff like that. But then the vampire hunter who's turned at the end, the only thing she can remember when she's walking out into the sun and the cross burns her hand and the sun starts to burn her and she like has to run to get inside, she's like, did I drink the blood? And then she starts to recover this memory of her drinking the blood, which Elizabeth had erased. So if Elizabeth also bit her, she doesn't remember it, and it's possible Elizabeth just like mesmerized her so she doesn't remember it. But then we didn't see the whole being buried down in soil either. So I'm very confused. Maybe because Elizabeth is so powerful, all you have to do is just drink a little bit of her blood and you're turned. Because the other guy who's turned was turned by one of the other vampires. So maybe Elizabeth could do it just by a drop of her blood, but that was a little bit confusing to me. But again, they probably didn't expect someone like me to sit down and break apart all the vampire rules. How do they die? So we see one run out into the sun and she turns to ash and blows away. We see two staked in their coffins, so staked to the chest. We see one is staked in the chest, and then the guy that's with them, Chuck or whatever his name is, he is staked and then beheaded, and his head is carried out into the sun. And then also one of the guys who is turned throughout the film does not last very long. He only lasts like one night, and then he is staked and he's beheaded and he was cut with a silver dagger. And then Elizabeth herself, during the battle, she has her throat sliced and then is staked. But at the very end, the throat slice heals up. She opens her eyes. So I think she is still alive. She's probably almost, I would guess for Elizabeth, if you don't behead her and take that head out into the sun, she's probably coming back. That's what I would think. Oh, and back to powers. That's the other thing. They heal cuts and wounds and stuff very, very quickly. Heartbeat or breathing, this is never addressed. However, when they are burying the guy right after he's turned, he's like, are you trying to kill me? And they're like, you're already dead. So I'm assuming no heartbeat, no breathing. That's probably a pretty good assumption for these vampires because they did feel like pretty classic vampires. Are they good or are they bad? The vampires are the bad guys, everybody, okay? They are the bad guys of the film. That being said, the way it ended with the vampire hunter being turned and running in to protect herself from the sun, I'll be interested to see. I would be interested. I don't know if they'll be able to do a sequel. It's definitely set up for a sequel. But I'd be interested if she came back. Is she now a vampire hunter who's a vampire, like AKA Blade? So that would be interesting. But as far as I can tell, the vampires are bad guys. And as soon as the human is turned into a vampire, he is immediately ready to murder. So obviously the bad guys. And once he got turned, he kept referring to himself as, oh no, I'm blanking on it now. And he says it like 20 times. They changed his name from something very mundane to like, I want to say Memnoch the Devil, but that's not right. That's Anne Rice, but it's something the devil. So it was so funny. He kept screaming it over and over again. I was cracking up. Tropes I love and tropes I hate. So I love vampires using nightclubs as hunting grounds. And this is kind of like a variation of that. They're using dating apps as hunting grounds. So I love that. Oh, when we talk about rules, they do not cast a reflection. So we do get like a really fun moment in a mirror, which I love when they do that. And we have seen this many times, but they have the thing where the vanity is open and the girls are just doing each other's makeup through the vanity because they don't cast a reflection. However, they can be captured on photograph. So that's interesting. They can do video calls, but they can't cast a reflection. Love those tropes. I love a coven of vampires hunting together. Always love that one. I love when they bring historical figures. You guys know I'm a sucker for a Vlad Tepes story or an Elizabeth Bathory story. And I will say Vlad gets way more of the spotlight than Elizabeth does, but I love that they brought Elizabeth back. And they didn't harp on the fact that she was Elizabeth too much, so that's good because that might start to get a little grating. But they just mentioned she's Elizabeth, so we know she's like 500 years old. And they have her bathe in blood, but then, you know, that was pretty much all that they tapped on. Tropes I hate. I can't say that I saw anything in this movie where I was like, oh, they did that thing. I didn't really see anything. As far as tropes go, where I was like, oh, I can't believe they used that thing. I mean, we've seen the thing before about the vampire, like just getting so bored with life and existing that they just run out into the sun. We have seen that before. And it's not used so often that I hate it. But I can't say there was anything in this movie that I groaned at, nor was there anything where I was like, oh, why did they do that? I mean, I think it was all done for a good purpose and a good reason. And considering the fact that I was sitting there picking the whole thing apart and like really paying attention to the vampires, there was nothing in there where I went, well, that doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? So I think the rules and the world building was pretty solid. All right, so this will be fun because we're going to do the ratings off the cuff. All right. How sexy or alluring are the vampires of the Velvet Lounge? So they use sexuality to lure people in. And you can tell that like humans see them and they're immediately like, oh, but I think it's because they're hot. I mean, they're really good looking people. So any hot girl who comes walking in like a leather bustier is gonna get attention. But they use their sexuality to lure in victims. And one of the characters, Joan, mentions many, many, many times, I want to have sex. Can we have sex? So she's always talking about that. But Elizabeth makes it clear that the reason Joan is doing this, like drinking liquor and having sex, is because she's trying to remember what it's like to be human. She wants to turn back human. She misses being human, something like that, right? Trying to recapture her humanity. And when it boils down to it, even when she starts, like they start, like you think that they might have sex, she ends up attacking the guys. So she never like goes through with the sexuality. So they do have sex because she asked, Joan even says like, she says to Elizabeth, like, can we have sex tonight? So clearly they have sex. But I gotta sit down and say to myself, are they more sexy or scary? They are more scary. So I want to give them like a 6 out of 10 for sexiness and allure because they use their sexuality. They clearly can have sex, and Joan appears to enjoy sex, but that is not their ultimate desire at the end of the day. How scary or evil are these vampires? So they have a lot of powers. They can move very fast. They can fly. They can mesmerize you. Like there are 3 girls that are hanging above Elizabeth, above her in the tub, and And Chuck, I think that's his name, Chuck, he comes over with like big hedge trimmers and goes to cut their heads off. And the girls are like excited to die because they've been mesmerized, which is very scary. They get humans to kill each other. They affect whole rooms. I mean, these vampires are a very big problem for humans. The only reason they aren't all the way at the top is because there are like groups of vampire hunters out there hunting these vampires. They are bound by the sun, so they have to be inside during the day. So those two things do kind of hold them at bay. And Elizabeth mentions that they have been around for a long time, but they haven't turned anybody in centuries. So it's not like they're out there making a ton of vampires, but they are killing a lot of people. And there is a scene where they like run over a human and the human is like tangled up in their wheel well. And Elizabeth is basically like, I'm stuck in this guy. Like, can we just rip him out and move on with our night? Like, they slaughter humans and do not care at all. They are very evil. They are definitely a problem for most humans, but there are things that are keeping them in check. So I want to give them like an 8 feels too big. I'm going to give them a 7.5 out of 10. Stakes to the heart for scariness and evil. No, you know what? I'm going to give them an 8. I feel like they earned that. They earned an 8. I mean, these are solid vampires. And it takes like an elite hunter to bring Elizabeth down. And at the end, Elizabeth was actually able to mesmerize her into drinking her blood. And now the vampire hunter is a vampire and Elizabeth is still alive. So I feel like 8 is well deserved. 8 out of 10, stakes to the heart for scariness and evil. That feels good to me. All right, my thoughts. And again, this is off the cuff. I've just come home. I did not want to write a script because I wanted this to feel genuine. Like, I am just your friend calling and telling you about a vampire movie. I went into this, so basically, you know me, I'm always like, I know the vampire films that are coming out a year before they're coming out. Like, I know when they're in development, I know when they get bought. And I did not hear about this film until just a week ago, like a week before it came out. There is not a whole lot of marketing out there. Not a lot of people are talking about it. So I bought the ticket. I was like, I'm gonna go to the first showing. It's a limited release, so I had to drive into Pittsburgh to watch the movie. And I fully expected for it to be horrible. I thought I am going to be sitting there for an hour and a half, like in agony, because it's going to be so bad. I was wrong. So the opening scene is her, you get to see her capture one of these men and how they do it. And that's another thing. They can like get into your head and make you see them as like a green fairy. So they'll tell them like, drink the absinthe and then you're gonna see a green fairy. And then they make these guys see them as green fairies. So they can like affect the way that you perceive them as well. And so this opening scene happens, and then we get these opening credits. The opening title sequence is so good. And then you have Bear McCreary's music. And then there's some great music choices in here, including Bela Lugosi's Dead by Bauhaus. And you guys know how I feel about that song. So here's what I will say. I laughed. There's good action in it. And the story was solid. So here's what I'll tell you. When watching it visually was almost like watching like a Grindhouse movie or like Kill Bill if it was a vampire film. So it was that kind of style. And there was like a little feel of like a detective noir to it. And then like the moon itself almost looked like something out of a comic book come to life. So stylistically, I really enjoyed it. There were moments where the writing was, ugh. There were a couple moments where the writing and the acting was a little bit cringe. And I will say, it wasn't the ladies. It was not the ladies. But there were some moments where I was just like, ooh. But it wasn't enough to ruin the whole movie for me. What I feel like I want to tell you guys is, it was fun. It was a fun ride. It was unexpected. It was something different. stylistically, it was so interesting. I mean, the writing is not the best, but if you can kind of set that aside and just enjoy the ride of the movie itself, and I think that Mina Savari and her two vampires were totally worth the film, okay? I think that the weaknesses that happen in this movie do not outweigh the vampires. The vampires were fantastic. And Mina Savari, I wish we were friends. I would love to talk to you about this movie. She did such a great job. I loved her. I loved the two vampires that were with her, the two ladies that were with her. Even our friend Bo from 30 Days a Night, whatever his name is, he was kind of fun, but he played sort of like the derpy side companion. So that was fun. Once Steven Dorff is turned, he was so funny. He doesn't last very long. He gets killed very quickly, but he was so funny. I had a great time with it. But yeah, I mean, there were some moments where I was just like, ooh, the writing and the acting were like, but it was fun. I really, really enjoyed it. It was unexpected. I'm so glad I went out and saw it. I'm glad I got to see it like early. I'm glad I got to come here and talk to you guys about it. Let me know if you've seen it. Let me know if you're gonna see it. Definitely worth like a watch, even if you just want to wait until it's streaming and then just watch it at home with your friends. I do recommend you watch it. It is a lot of fun, especially if you love vampires. And I think you could watch this movie with people who don't necessarily love vampires, but would love the style of this. The style was so interesting. And you know, I went for the vampires, and the vampires were solid. They were solid villains. They were fun to watch. I chuckled, and I just had such a good time with it. I was so surprised. It's just the right amount of movie. They left it open for a possible sequel, so they could definitely have a sequel, I guess, if it does well enough. If there's a sequel, guys, let me be in it. Please, please, please. Even if it's just a cameo. I will work for free, okay? All right, that's it. I'm wrapping this up. This is a bonus episode. We got another one coming out tomorrow. Make sure that you follow me, like, subscribe, share, all that stuff. Check out the video description. Come check us out in the Discord. We talk about this stuff every day, all day long. We are constantly having conversations about vampires in there. All right, gang. I love you. I wish you wicked hugs and bloody kisses. Good evening.